Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to The Revolution. I'm your host, Megan Connor. And today we are going to be watching together the pre-trial hearing that happened in the Brad Simpson case here in San Antonio earlier this morning. Now, for those of you who are new to the case and you have not heard anything about it, I do have an entire video that breaks down everything that we know so far. There has been a gag order on this case, and so what came out initially after Suzanne's disappearance is pretty much what we already know at this point. And that's it. And so when jury selection starts on February 13th, I'm going to be covering the case to make sure that you don't miss any of the details. But to give you a summary of the case so far, Suzanne Simpson is a 51-year-old real estate agent. She's a mom who is from the Alamo Heights area here inside the city limits of San Antonio. She disappeared on October 6, 2024, which happens to be my 50th birthday, which is one of the reasons this case caught my attention, and also just because it happened right in my backyard. And we know some of the same people, as well as there's some overlap there. And so I've been trying to follow this case to get more information about it. Her disappearance followed a physical altercation with her husband, Brad, across the street from their home on Olmos Drive. They had attended a party at the Argyle in Alamo Heights earlier that evening as guests where they had a verbal argument. Suzanne left around 8:30 p.m. with their 5-year-old daughter and went to the grocery store. And then the daughter and mom, Suzanne, returned home. Then approximately 9:15 p.m., Suzanne called a family friend saying that she was coming over, and then called her mother reporting that Brad had assaulted her, causing her pain in her arm, back, and neck. During the same time, Brad allegedly accessed an AT&T app to suspend her cell service. And she briefly went to her friend's home. She arrived there around 9:25 p.m. that night. And then a neighbor reported that he witnessed a physical struggle outside their house around 10 p.m. He said that Suzanne broke free and ran into a wooded area that was across the street. And then he reported hearing screaming in that wooded area after Brad chased her there. So the neighbor later saw Brad's truck leave and return multiple times, but he did not see Suzanne again. And phone records show that Suzanne's device was last located at the residence on the Find My app at around 10:22 p.m., while Brad's phone entered lockdown mode from 11 p.m. onward, cycling on and off in what police allegedly believe was to evade detection. So the couple had a history of domestic violence, including an August 2023 assault, and Brad was known to control Suzanne by taking her phone when they argued. In August of 2024, Suzanne told her personal banker that if she went missing, that authorities should search for her in a lake. And that's probably the most troubling thing that came out about this report, that Suzanne had given an outcry in the past. And obviously, they were having problems. Apparently, she had a go bag at a friend's house as well. Brad did report her missing on October 7th, but not until a friend of Suzanne's contacted him, and learning that he had not already called 911, she reported to Brad that she was going to call 911 and report Suzanne missing. So that, at that point, Brad was arrested on October 9th on charges of assault and family violence and unlawful restraint. But then after several search warrants were executed, he finally, on November 7th, was charged with her murder, tampering with a corpse, tampering with physical evidence, and possession of a prohibited weapon. So if you have more questions about the case details, I'll be happy to talk about those after we watch the hearing. It's a very short hearing. It's only 6 minutes long. I have not watched it yet. And so I decided to go ahead and just jump on a live, and we'll watch the hearing together. It's been a long time since I have done anything like this. Thanks, Rebecca's mom, 7423, for becoming a member. I appreciate that. And it's good to see so many familiar faces in the chat. Hey, Robin, good to see you. Hey, Jesse, Kiki, Erica, Jesse. Sorry, I already said Jesse. Cat Lady 4. It's so good to see you guys. It's just been a very long time since I've done any live reporting on a true crime case. And so I'm really excited to get into this case because I want to see justice for Suzanne. And I really want to start calling more attention to these cases where coercive control leads to domestic violence, and domestic violence, sometimes leads to murder. And I want to raise more awareness so people are willing to have these conversations earlier so that they don't get this far. Chelsea, thanks for your support. I appreciate you, and good to see you as well, Joe. Give me 1 second, just trying to figure out, I've got to share my screen here with you guys, and we'll watch this hearing together. I think I want to make myself smaller so that I don't get in the way of the hearing. Again, if you have questions about the case or if you're new to it, I'm happy to answer those after the hearing's over. I'll just go ahead and star them while the hearing is playing, and we'll talk about all of it afterwards. Again, this is happening right here at the Bexar County Courthouse right here in San Antonio.
Okay, 2024 CR 012-097, 2024 CR 012-095, and 2024.
I'm going to see if I can boost the volume for you guys here.
CR 012-094, State versus Brad Simpson. Will the lawyers please state their names?
Casey Sandoval for the state of Texas, and Michael Uriah.
Stephen Gilmore, Tanya Rivera, and Brittany Durham for Mr. Simpson.
Okay, yes, sir. Are you Brad Chandler Simpson?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes. Let's see, to the parties. I have here that today we were scheduled for pre-trial hearings. We were scheduled for docket call on February the 13th of 2026, and then jury selection on February the 17th of 2026. So what's the state saying?
Judge, the state has two motions. The first one is regarding that trial date. We do have a motion for continuance for the court to consider. And do you need a copy, Judge?
I have talked.
Okay. And the reason we're asking for that, Judge, is the discovery deadline in this case was in September 2025. And just the sheer volume of discovery that's been given to the state, most of it was completed by September 1st, but we've gotten waves of more evidence over time. And it is, of course, the state has a duty to review all of that evidence. So we've been diligent in doing that, but the volume has made it just to where it's impossible to complete that by the February trial date. So I'm asking the court for a 60-day continuance to complete that review so that they can be diligent in reviewing that evidence to prepare for trial.
So I know the volume is really, really low on this, and that's why I put the captioning on here, but essentially the attorney for the state is asking for a 60-day continuance to review the evidence. Apparently, a lot more evidence has come in since the last time they had a status conference. So let's hear what the judge has to say.
Okay, and defense?
Judge, given that I'm entitled to receive the discovery and have to review it before I can provide Mr. Simpson effective assistance at trial, while I can't agree to the continuance, I understand the state's position in the remaining side.
Okay, then in light of the fact that you're getting more discovery and the defense still needs to review that, like you said, provide an effective assistance of counsel, I'm going to grant the state's motion for continuance on all three cases. And so that's approximately 60-day reset. Does the state have anything else, or the defense have anything else?
We have one more request, Judge, and that is simply to set a hearing on forfeiture by wrongdoing. We're requesting a 3849 hearing in this case before trial to have the court determine whether certain statements of Suzanne should be admitted over the defense's objection.
Okay, and to you, Counselor, have you had an opportunity to review and reply to that motion?
I've had an opportunity to review the motion. I haven't had an opportunity to reply. Defense is opposed to that motion and will file a written response.
Okay, so file your written response so I can review it, and then I'll make a determination as to whether or not we're gonna go forward on that motion. And then, is there anything else from the defense?
Judge, I'm conferring with the state. We have requested personnel files for 3 of the officers involved in this investigation. Chief Fidel Villegas, Melissa Campbell, and Jesse Perez. My understanding is that the state is unopposed to subpoenaing these records and turning them over to the court for in-camera inspection, or upon the court may determine any items in those records that are relevant and Brady, and will be turned over to defense and state under protective order.
And state?
We are unopposed to that motion, Judge.
Okay, so given that the state is unopposed, and anyway, the typical procedure would be for those files to be produced for the court for an in-camera review. Just because they're produced doesn't mean that they're going to be admissible, of course.
Of course.
And then once I review them, we'll make a determination as to whether there's any Brady or impeachment material in those files. Now, the state, are you going to issue subpoenas for those records and allow the city attorneys for those? What jurisdictions are they?
Almost Park, City of Converse, Bexar County Sheriff, and the Texas Department of Public Safety.
Okay, so just serve those subpoenas on those parties, and that can, I imagine we're going to have a hearing because they're going to come in with the records and potentially file a motion to quash. At least that's what's happened in the past. And so we'll wait for that to happen. As soon as those parties reply, then what we'll do is I'll set a hearing on that issue only. Okay.
Okay.
And as soon as they do it, then we'll have a hearing on that matter. Anything else for me to sign?
Nothing from the state at this time, Judge.
Nothing from defense, Judge.
Okay, so for now, the trial is continued, and then we'll move along as best we can as soon as I get the IA files. My understanding is some of them may be very large files, is my understanding, and so depending on that, then we'll decide how much time I need to review them, whether they are admissible or not, with certain parts, and then we'll schedule a new scheduling. I'm just trying to do it as scheduling. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge.
That closes the record on this case.
Okay, well, I'm definitely going to have to go back and rewind some of that hearing because it was really hard to hear. And while I was jotting down notes, I wasn't able to also read the closed captioning. So I'm going to rewind just a little bit, but I do want to answer a few questions that have come up here first. First of all, Cat Ride 3 asks, do we know if the kids are supporting him like Emma does Chad? As far as we know, the answer to that question is no. I actually reported in my longer form video on this that their oldest daughter, who was 20 at the time, she did an Instagram post, a pretty scathing Instagram post accusing her father of allegedly redrumming her mother in an act of rage, and she was very vocal about the domestic violence aspect of this. The 2 other children are much younger. One is in high school. The other one is just, I believe, 7 years old at this point. And so right now they're being cared for by family. And as far as I know, the younger kids are. Brad's brother has been very vocal about him cooperating with police and urging him to do the right thing. And so there are some interesting family dynamics that go around this. We have Brad's brother, who was the member at the Argyle Club, the one who invited them to the dinner the night that she disappeared. And he's been, he's a very well-respected person in the community. I'm sure he's helping to make sure that the kids are cared for. Also, Suzanne's mom is from the area. She lives nearby. And then that oldest daughter is, I believe, still in school at this time. She has done, I think, just one interview, and then the judge put a gag order on everything and ordered nobody that was going to be testifying to be allowed to speak with police. Now, the sister of Suzanne Simpson was also arrested a little bit earlier, I should say late in 2025. I was going to say earlier this year, but late in 2025, for harassing Brad Simpson's family members. And that's it's a completely separate case. So Jesse Roblin, to answer your question, this is what the oldest daughter believes, that her father allegedly did kill her mother. And so that's her position. Again, this is all allegedly, of course. ADJ Farside, I wanted to get you some information about Brad Simpson's attorney. He's got a court-appointed attorney from the public defender's office. This attorney his name is Stephen Gilmore. He's worked there for about 2 years in the public defender's office. He's got a bachelor's in criminal justice from UTSA and a law degree from St. Mary's Law School here in San Antonio. It's a pretty well-respected law school. He started out as a legal assistant, and then he clerked for Brock Huffman's law offices in San Antonio. And now he was in private practice for a while. Obviously, he mostly handled state, juvenile, and federal cases at trial and appellate levels. And so he's got a little bit of experience, but he was appointed shortly after Brad's arrest back in October, before this was a murder case. At that time, it was domestic violence charges. But he's also described the initial charges as ludicrous and part of an effort to incapacitate Simpson. And he filed motions to adjust the pretrial release conditions. They wanted to have Brad out on bail and give him contact with his children. So the defense attorneys opposed the ask by the prosecution for an extension in this case. But again, the judge, as we just saw, ultimately granted a continuance. There is a lot of evidence that could potentially be thrown out in this case, because what happened, we believe allegedly, is that Brad Simpson left his home, put his phone in lockdown mode. They have another property located in Bandera, Texas, which is about an hour away. And there was a burn site there where a cell phone, actually several cell phones and a laptop were burned. Brad was originally arrested in Kendall County, which is near Kerrville, Texas, even farther away from here. And so they are trying to work with all these different law enforcement agencies. You may have heard some of those agencies named. It's not only the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, it's also the Olmos Park Police Department. The Texas Rangers have been involved. And I suspect that's the reason why there is so much evidence, is because there are multiple law enforcement agencies working on this case. And so the judge at the end there agreed to an in-camera review of the files that the prosecution is wanting to come in. And he clarified that just because he's going to review the files doesn't mean that they're going to be admissible, but they're going to have that hearing and go through the files. And the prosecution's going to present their case for including it, and the defense is going to present their objections, and then the judge will get to decide what comes in and what doesn't. That's part of what I want to go back over in the hearing. I didn't quite catch why they were objecting to it. The younger children were at home that night, and Suzanne was at the grocery store with the 5-year-old child, and then they came home, and apparently the children witnessed this altercation that happened inside the house, and then Suzanne left the house. So it's a complicated situation, and my heart is breaking for these kids who have had to live through this nightmare. and, really witness the domestic violence going on between their mom and dad for quite some time. So I'm going to go back really quickly to the hearing, and I want to go back and see if I can catch what they were talking about with the files.
Judge, given that.
Let me just share again.
I'm entitled to receive the discovery and have to review it before I can provide Mr. Simpson.
He says, I'm entitled to receive discovery and review it before I can provide Mr. Simpson effective assistance at trial.
I can't agree to the continuance. I understand the state's position.
So he doesn't want to agree to the continuance.
Okay, then.
And the judge goes ahead and grants it.
Like you said, provide an effective motion for continuance on all three cases. Approximately 60-day recess. Anything else, or the defense have anything else?
We have one more request, Judge, and that is simply to set a hearing on forfeiture by wrongdoing. We're requesting a 3849 hearing in this case before trial to have the court determine.
Yeah, so the next part of this hearing was about statements of Suzanne Simpson being admitted. Of course, the defense doesn't want these statements to be admitted into testimony, doesn't want this to come into the trial record, but they are requesting, the state is requesting a hearing to determine whether or not certain statements by Suzanne Simpson can come into the trial. And so that is definitely something I will be following as well, because that's really important to know what statements the defense is trying to have excluded. And the defense is going to file a written response in opposition to that, to having a hearing.
Motion. And then is there anything else from the defense?
Judge, I'm conferring with the state. We have requested personnel files for 3 of the officers involved in this investigation.
Okay, that was the part that I missed. They're asking for the personnel files for 3 of the officers who are involved in the investigation. And this is a pretty typical defense tactic, as far as I'm aware, that any investigator or any law enforcement who is involved in investigating the case or collecting evidence, the defense will review their personnel files to see if there are any skeletons in the closet, basically. If you'll remember, back in one of the Arizona cases, there was an officer who was working in evidence collection that had some problems with human resources in her job. She was eventually dismissed from the job. And so the defense was trying to say, you can't bring in this evidence that she collected because she wasn't good at her job, and she eventually got fired. So that's the kind of thing that the defense is going to be looking for in those personnel records, to see if they can impeach the quality of the investigation or the collection of the evidence and potentially catch a break there. As far as I'm concerned, the evidence seems pretty clear in this case. There's a lot of evidence that what actually happened is that Brad disposed of Suzanne's remains based on what was found in the back of his truck, or what was seen in the back of his truck on multiple security cameras. He was buying supplies at Home Depot. They have that on camera, very similar to the Brian Walsh case that we just covered. And so it really seems clear that there's not going to really be any other kind, or any kind of a defense that they can put forward that is going to bring doubt into the jury's minds. But that's what we're here for, is to see what the defense is possibly going to say. I don't think there's a lot they can say, but what I'm hoping is that as we get to hear more of these hearings, we're going to have at least 2 more hearings now, it looks like. One for the Suzanne Simpson statements that want to come in, and another for the files of the police officers to find any impeaching evidence. So I will keep track of the docket in this case, and when the defense files their response to the state's request, I'll cover that as well. You can be sure that I'm going to cover all of the things that come out in this case. I'm very invested in this. This is just, it's very close to home. And also raising awareness about the domestic violence aspect of it is really important to me as well. The video that I did on New Year's Eve, where I gave summaries of all the cases I'm going to be covering in the new year, we also talked about a risk assessment for people who are experiencing domestic violence. And it is overwhelmingly women who experience domestic violence, but I don't want to leave out the fact that men experience it as well. And there is a threat assessment that you can review on your own. I will put the link in the show notes, that if you answer yes to even 3 of those questions, then you're at an increased risk for domestic violence. And I want people to be aware that there's a way for you to check that out. And I should say that if you're even thinking it might be possible that you're in a violent relationship or that there might be red flags, probably that is in itself a red flag indicator that you should take the assessment and that you should start documenting and reporting everything you possibly can to law enforcement and start making a plan to get safe. That's the thing I want to focus on mostly in this case, is raising that awareness and helping more people to escape those situations when they possibly can. The most dangerous time for an individual in a violent relationship is when they attempt to leave. And in this case, Suzanne was just trying to leave the house. She reportedly told a friend that if she tried to divorce him, he would put her in the ground. That was a quote from Suzanne Simpson. And I just want to encourage people, if you're in a situation like that, please go to police. And if you hear someone talking about a situation like that, you also can make a report. Even if you think you don't know much, just the fact that someone outcried to you, they call that an outcry, you can report that outcry and police will investigate it. And if there's nothing going on and you're wrong, obviously nothing bad will happen to anybody. But if you're right, you could end up saving someone's life, or at the very least preventing further abuse from happening to them. So thank you so much for being here today, everybody. I really appreciate it. Please take a second to like this video and share it with anybody who's following this case. I am going to follow this closely and cover the entire thing. I also want to ask you to join me on Sundays, where I will give an updated report of SA that's happening in the LDS Church. And those are going to be, for the most part, the lives that I'm doing. I'm also doing a recap of the new documentary on Netflix featuring Sean Combs. And the reason I'm doing that is not because I'm a fan or a hater. It's because that case also has strong elements of coercive control. And I think that people don't understand coercive control well enough. And I think by watching the documentary and pointing out these red flags that happened so early in Sean Combs' life, we can understand how he got to be so powerful and the reason why his case in New York, he was found not guilty on trafficking charges. And that might not seem that serious to people, but if you have seen the video of him assaulting his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, that is as close as you get to surviving a domestic violence situation. She is very, very lucky to be alive. And I want to create more awareness around this topic so that we can hopefully help more people to escape these situations. I hope you'll join me as we go through this case and as I help people understand more about coercive control and domestic violence. I'm a survivor myself. I'm lucky to be alive myself. And so, of course, that hits really close to home. And I just want to be a voice of support for those out there experiencing the same thing, and to share the message that it's possible to escape, it's possible to survive, and it's possible to go on to have a happy and peaceful life after abuse situations. So I hope that you will join me and share my channel with your friends and family members who need to hear the same information. I'm really grateful for the community of beautiful humans that we have assembled here. You can also see bonus content on my Patreon channel, as well as an entire 8-module e-course with over 15 hours of recorded material on how to identify and defend against manipulation and control. I hope you'll join us there, and I hope to see you again very soon.